Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the NBA Front Office Show. Starting out a new week. Happy Monday. And there's a storm brewing. Hurricane Harden, which I definitely need to make a graphic or intro for, has blown in and has reached landfall. Somehow it's hit Philadelphia. Keith Smith, what a weekend in the James Harden saga. And then we wake up today to even more news that just, it feels like at every turn it gets crazier and crazier. And now here we are where it sounds like James Harden and Daryl Morey are like a bickering couple. And now Daryl Morey is being called a liar by James Harden.
Yeah,
What is this
right.
world that we're living in?
Who has a cage fight first? James Harden and Daryl Morey, or Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg? Because it sounds like
Ooh,
Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk's cage fight is off. So maybe Morey and Harden will climb in the
maybe.
squared circle and do battle. All right, yeah, this was crazy. So we get news Saturday, I believe it was, from Woj that basically Philadelphia's done. Like they're not talking trades anymore. They haven't been able to find a trade that they like, and they are going to move on, expecting Harden to be a participant in training camp. That was followed up, I think, later Saturday night with a report from Sam Amick saying, yeah, we recognize the ESPN reporting, but a source close to Harden says no chance. He's not playing for Philadelphia again. Then early today, Monday morning, as we record this Monday, August 14th. So in the evening time, James Harden right now is on a Adidas tour over in China. He stands up in front of a bunch of media and fans and who knows who else is there. But he says, Daryl Morey is a liar. And I won't play for an organization that he's a part of. And then he, just in case anybody missed it, he said, let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will not be a part of any organization he's a part of. So there it is.
Wow. Um, I mean, it's rare that the drama gets that pronounced. Like normally we hear, oh, so and so has requested a trade, but it's never public, right? Because
Correct.
then you get into fines and all that kind of stuff. And now you've got James Harden flat out denying that he will ever be on this team again. But before we even get into the whole, like, what does this mean for the NBA? What can this mean for fines and all that kind of stuff? Correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, but isn't there a rule in the new CBA where because he's under the last year of his contract, if James Harden just no shows with the 76ers, he's actually still under team control after this season? It's not like his contract expires, then he gets to just go skip off to whatever team he wants.
Yeah, so so what happens is if a player withholds services, which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially doesn't show up, right? So what happens is if they do that for more than 30 days after the start of the last season covered by his player contract. So sounds like they're kind of give a little leeway for a 30-day holdout. But for more than 30 days, well, I guess you could do it on and off, like come in for a week and leave for a week. But anyway, more than 30 days after the start of the last season covered by his player contract shall not be deemed to have been completed. What that means is then the player doesn't become a free agent. They can't negotiate or sign a new contract with another team unless thus the prior team gives them permission and agrees to that. And that is not just another NBA team, that is any professional team. And that is something that we know from past practices FIBA will uphold. FIBA will say no because they've done it the other way, where guys have tried to get out of contracts in other non-NBA leagues and tried to get to the NBA. And FIBA has always said no, you have to follow your league's rules. So if James Harden decides tomorrow, hey, I want to go play in China next year, not going to be allowed unless Philly says, fine, go, we're done. What we don't know is would Philly say, yeah, we just want to wash our hands clean of this, be gone, like we're finished with this? Or would they say, no, we're going to hold out and make you kind of make good to us first? So we'll see. I continue to believe it won't get there, right?
Yeah.
Something will happen here. But then there's been some kind of subsequent reporting today, more reaffirming reporting that Daryl Morey has said that he will not do a trade that doesn't keep them a title contender and doesn't do a trade that or won't do a trade that that like eats into their salary cap flexibility for next offseason. I tweeted about this earlier today. It's just that's hard to pull
Yeah.
off, right? That's even removing the whole Harden of it all. If
To
you were
check
just like,
both those
yeah,
boxes.
right, yeah, we want to be really good this year, but we don't want to eat into our salary cap flexibility. That
Yeah.
just becomes a very hard thing to pull off.
It's like I want to buy a new house, but I also want to save a bunch of money.
Yeah,
Right? Like
yeah,
how do you accomplish both of those things at the same time, or whatever it is? You know, I really want to buy a video game system and save money at the same time. Like that's very difficult to do, obviously. So, and in some ways contradictory. So, when we're looking at this situation, I mean, if you're James Harden, you got to be feeling like, wait, if that's your goal, then you're never actually going to trade me.
yeah.
Right? Like that, it's not going to happen. And then when you get that confirmation that the 76ers are pulling away from trade discussions, and who knows what's been said behind closed doors. I think there's some sentiment out there that the 76ers, in James Harden taking less so the Sixers could sign some other players, may have kind of wink, said, hey, we'll take care of you next year. And now, obviously, that's not. So maybe he feels upset about that. But there also could be an element to this where he's been told, hey, we're going to trade you. Okay, we'll take care wherever it is you want to go. And now suddenly the Sixers are playing hardball and saying they're not going to trade him. And he's left, again, feeling slighted. Again, though, this also goes back to he picked up his option.
Yep.
If he was so dead set on not wanting to be a 76er, if this was so important to it, and again, maybe things have happened since then that have changed how strongly he feels about this. But some of this also, like the responsibility here is not fully on the 76ers. If James Harden really despised being a 76er, don't pick up your option. Go wherever you want to go. Go sign whatever contract you want. Don't pick up the option. Why did you pick up the option? Oh, because you wanted $36 million and you weren't going to get that anywhere else. Sometimes it's, you try to have your cake and eat it too, and it doesn't quite work out. I think there's responsibility on both parties here. This can't just be, the big bad 76ers are doing James Harden wrong here. Harden had control of the situation and then opted into his contract.
Yeah, I think Chris Mannix was the one who put this in a tweet, and I thought it was really well said, is James Harden could be calling Daryl Morey a liar from the, hey, I opted out thinking you were going to make good. This was meaning 2 summers ago. I opted out of that contract so you would have more flexibility to sign PJ Tucker, Daniel House, and do the moves you did. And I thought this summer I was getting a max deal from you. Or it could be the liar of the more immediate of, hey, I opted in because you said opt in and we'll trade you. Yes. Versus just leaving. My guess is, and this is strictly a guess, James Harden in camp, when it came time for option time, was, I want to get to the Clippers. There's no way to get to the Clippers for any kind of reasonable money that's not a minimum contract without a trade happening, right? There's just no way because they don't have the ability to sign me. And my thought was at that time was then, all right, they probably have something prearranged. They know there will be a deal done. Mm-hmm. But clearly that was just a, hey, that's where I'd like to play. And the Clippers are like, cool, but we don't really want to give everything under the sun to get you.
Yeah.
Because that's not where we feel like we need. One, we feel like we need to go to, and probably we don't really feel like that's what your value is. Then I think the other piece becomes from the Philly side is, did Philly say, yeah, we're ready to go? And then circumstances change. And it's like, you had some injuries. You played well, because now it's being painted like James Harden is garbage, and he's not. He's still a very good player.
Yeah.
But like, you're not a max guy. We certainly don't want to give you the max deal for as many years as we can, which was really about 4 years this summer. So I think that turned into, let's hold off here, right? Let's wait. Let's see what develops. And then that's where it's, no, if you're not giving me the max, then trade me, get me out of here. And now obviously things have gone so far down the wrong pathway for both sides. You can't salvage this anymore. No. You can't, there's no coming back from this. And we talked about it before. If you're Philly and you force him to show up, you know what it's going to look like. We've seen it twice, what it looks like. He's not going to show up and play great. And for all those people who are like, I don't know, he's got to prove being a free agent. No, he doesn't. This guy's heading into the twilight of his career. Teams know what he is. He doesn't have to prove that he can still play. They're going to look at it, and if they're interested, they're like, yeah, I don't care that he played like crap for Philly. Like, he wasn't trying. He didn't care. He didn't want to be there. We're happy to get him and bring him in. So that's just, this is not going to go well for Philly.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't going to go well for Philadelphia trying to get, and we've talked about the Joel Embiid of it all is, that's certainly a concerning part of this, as you're saying. So,
Hmm?
I mean, what happens here for Philadelphia? Like Daryl Morey is trying to get the best deal that he possibly can, and so he's playing every card he can. James Harden is doing the same. He's trying to force the issue to get to the Clippers. So I don't know, like in this messy situation, where does fault lie here in this? Because you know what happens is 76ers fans are kind of caught in the crossfire here between all of this.
Yeah, everybody right involved has some fault here. I think Daryl Morey has fault for. Let's go back, kind of saying he needed this massive return for Ben Simmons,
Mm-hmm.
and that put him in a spot where when that didn't come, then kind of got a little fortunate that the Harden situation fell in his lap, and he was able to make that trade. But that kind of maybe mishandling that situation led to this one. Now this one's clearly been, I don't want to necessarily say mishandled, but not handled well. If it can put it that way. And then you have Harden basically on his side, kind of saying like, yeah, I'm in a spot where now it's I don't want to be here anymore, but I'm not going to give James Harden. Everybody who watches this, I know but everybody watches and listens should know. Hey, my feeling is if teams 2 years into a 5-year deal can be like, yeah, we want to trade a guy. I never have a
Sure.
huge problem when a player says I don't really want to be here anymore. But the way Harden's handled his last two situations like
Mm.
this, his hands aren't exactly clean here either, right? Like he's made a mess of things. So I think this is if we're serving blame pie, there's plenty to go around for everybody here. And the ones like you said who are caught are the 76ers. Now they're in an absolute mess in this situation that, yeah, their guy created it in Daryl Morey, but what happens moving forward with this team? Where does this all go?
Yeah, exactly. And this is, like you said, there's plenty of blame to go around. So by no means am I saying the Sixers are blameless here. By no means, and we don't know what's been said behind closed doors.
Sure.
By no means am I saying James Harden is blameless here. Again, plenty of it to happen. I have to think though that to some degree, because we thought this was going to get addressed in the CBA, but we're in an era where the sentiment among players is take the money now and figure out the destination later. You can always force a trade to where it is that you want to go. And at some point, there was going to be a pushback. And I'm not saying, like, I agree with you, frankly. I think if players want to ask for trades, that's fine. That's fine. I still think the most damaging thing a player can do to a franchise is walk in free agency. That's a terrible situation to be in if you've got a star level player and you have to watch that player walk away for nothing. So I'm all for players cooperating with teams and saying, "Hey, I really don't want to be here. I really want to be, somewhere else." But it's when you gets narrowed down to one team, and this is the only team I want to go to, and that team isn't willing to give up or doesn't have anything worthwhile or significant, and that's going to drastically set back the franchise, that it gets messy. And I think we're heading towards this, right? I mean, at some point, a team was going to go, well, you're under contract and we don't like what's coming back, so we don't have to do this. I don't know that we're going to get to that point here where it becomes like a dig your heels in the sand and fight back type situation here. I don't think we're ultimately going to land like I don't think it's going to be December and James Harden is still on the 76ers. But you kind of knew that at some point there was going to be a pushback because this sentiment has been so widespread. And again, I'm with you. I'm fine with players asking out. I'm fine with players working with teams and finding new homes and all that kind of stuff. But you knew there's always going to be a counter to whatever the current movement is, to whatever the current direction things are going is. There's always going to be a counter push. For some reason, this is stupid because I was a teenager in the 90s, but I always think of what happened when all the boy bands got super popular in the midnight, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and, all my favorites. What happened? Well, there was also a counter movement of like all the new metal stuff like Korn and Limp Bizkit and Slipknot and all the super, super heavy stuff also came out as kind of a counter to that, like a pushback to all that kind of stuff. that's kind of what I think is going to happen here in the NBA. And again, I don't know that this is the inflection point, but it's so prevalent that players just say, well, I can get the money and then pick my destination later. At some point, there's going to be a pushback against that.
So Daryl Morey and Joe Cronin are forming a grunge band. Is that what
That's
I'm hearing?
that's
Kind of.
that's it. No,
Sort of.
this is post grunge. This is the
Post grunge.
next.
Yeah. This is
Yeah,
yeah. I get you.
but
Okay.
that is what's happening. That means that Daryl Morey is going to start screaming into a microphone at some point.
Perfect. I'm all for it. I mean, if that's where we're headed, let's go. Yeah, I think it is funny that we're kind of in two spots with this, right? We're both Portland and Philadelphia both more or less said, hey, like that's awesome. We're happy to trade you to those places, but they've got to give us the best offer and they've got to give us a good offer. And that's where, right, we've talked about it a lot on this show. Things could have went really sideways with Anthony Davis getting traded to the Lakers.
Sure.
Because of him basically making it known, like, hey, I'm going to the Lakers, whether it's right now, it's a year from now, whenever it is, I'm going to the Lakers. And that, quite frankly, definitely got some teams off. Now, the Lakers still negotiated in good faith, and the Pelicans got a really nice return from that trade. So what's happened here, though, is it's Portland and Philadelphia, in the case of Damian Lillard and James Harden, respectively. They don't feel like they're in a spot where they're getting the best offer, getting what they feel they need in return. And that's where, I continue to say it's a sliding scale, right? The two teams with the players, they'll come down a little. The other team will come up a little, and then we'll end up here, right? We'll end up, they meet and off we go, and this gets done. Andrew Brand, he's a football guy. I know you follow him on Twitter. He used to be a Packers executive. He has a very famous saying that he repeats all the time, and he repeats it in kind of all sports, but it's deadline spur action, right? And the deadline in this case is the start of training camp, right? Do you want James Harden, Damian Lillard walking in those doors, or quite frankly, not walking in those doors? Media day becomes a circus because we know how it'll go. It'll be the same thing it was with Ben Simmons of, hey, we're not going to talk about that. And then every question that was asked anyway was about Ben Simmons. It'll be the same thing in both Portland and Philadelphia, and to some extent Miami and LA, because they're going to be like, hey, do you guys want Damian Lillard here? Do you want James Harden? And most of the players will be like, hey, the guys who are here. And the guys who want to be here, those are the ones I want to work with, blah, 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 all the cliches. But it's just, it's a distraction you don't need as you're going to start your season. So I think this is a very interesting place. Now, what's different though is Portland's kind of basically owning like, hey, we trade Dame, we're rebuilding. And as Sean Hyken has put it very well, Portland can be really bad with Damian Lillard on the roster or not on the roster. Like they're just a young team that's skewing young. Philadelphia is not really in a position where they want to be bad, right? And if you have Harden not trying, well, now all of a sudden that makes a mess of things. You got to figure it out. So that's going to be something. My guess is still probably see both guys get traded and something happens here, but everybody will have to give a little, right? And if I'm Philly, I want to ask you this question. A lot of people are saying, well, why does Philly care about staying a contender? They're not a contender now. How do you feel about that?
I'd say they're a contender. I've got them as a contender. I do. I mean, and part of that, Keith, this may be, I don't know exactly how you feel. I believe you're a fan of Tyrese Maxey. Yeah, I'm very high on Maxey, and part of why I have Philly as a contender is my belief in him and his ability to continue growing even as James Harden's powers fade. I think Tyrese Maxey is going to be absolutely phenomenal this next year, so that's part of that. But they've got too much talent on this team, and you just never know when everything can click. Obviously, this isn't a great start to the season, and you wouldn't look at this and say, oh yeah, everything's going to really come together for this group, but there's a lot of talent here. You've got the reigning MVP. You've got a good young player in Tyrese Maxey. I still like Tobias Harris and what he can bring, even on the last year of his deal. I think they've got some good pieces on this team that if things break right, it's not out of the question for them to be in the NBA Finals this year. Again, it's not what I would predict. I wouldn't make them the favorite or anything like that, but they're one of those teams where you could see the path, whereas there's other teams where you can just say, okay, like the Atlanta Hawks, they're not going to the NBA Finals, right? Like I think we can say that with some certainty. Even though I think they can be a decent team. The 76ers, I could see a path where they could get there.
Yeah, and now I openly understand my social media following is colored in green with
Sure.
Celtics fans who are taking no shortage of delight in this whole thing blowing up in Philadelphia, because it's Lakers way up here off camera, and then it is 76ers next and their rival rankings
Sure.
for Celtics fans. So it's but it's not but I'm seeing it from very you see enough of your same followers all the time, and I see a lot of people who they're not a Celtics fan, and they're not a Sixers hater by any means. They're just more of a evened out fan, and they're just like, yeah, like I just don't think Philly's on that level, and that's to some extent it's hard to argue with, right? They've never been past the second round, so that's a whole thing, with this group. So that's I kind of get it when people say those things. I tend to think they're a contender, but like a contender on that second, third tier of contenders.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I haven't worked out all my, personal, where am I slotting every team in right now? Because quite frankly, still waiting on a couple big shoes to drop to sort through all that stuff. But as we go through that, like, yeah, I'm like, all right, they're behind a handful of other teams, but it's to your point. It's not one where it's like, there's no world where I can envision this team being really good. Like, no, there absolutely is. And if Harden was still there, there's definitely a path to that hit there and engaged, obviously. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting kind of pushback feedback that came out in the last few days of, this is, where this stuff's at. So, it's, we're going to see right now. Now we're back to, well, I guess same place we've been, right? As the wait and see game with all of this. But now we definitely had some shots fired from all sides on this one.
All right. Well, let's let the storm clouds clear here, and let's talk about the NBA schedule. We have a few games that have been leaked. Now, this is, I'll tell you what, Keith, as somebody who's covered the league for a while now, there's a rhythm to how this goes down, and it wouldn't shock me on one hand if the whole schedule is out by the time the show is published. Right, like that could definitely happen. Usually within a day or two of the Christmas Day game, opening night, those games kind of leaking, the whole schedule comes out. But this year has a different feel to it because of the midseason tournament, which that schedule is going to come out tomorrow. So I'm kind of left, and it's kind of fun, in the dark in terms of the rhythm of how this is all going to go down.
Yeah, how this still works without the in-season tournament component, which we already knew those were going to be I think those are Tuesdays and Thursdays, maybe. I know there's select nights that is when the in-season tournament games are going to be played. So we know that they're making a big deal of those nights, and as a reminder, these aren't extra games. These are games that would have been played anyway. They're just being kind of double counted as the in-season tournament and a regular season matchup. So what's happened with these is those will all get released, but in general, what they do is, like 2 months ago in June, every team had to submit to the league, hey, these are dates we really need to work around, right? Probably the two most famous ones, the Lakers and the Grammys, and the San Antonio Spurs and the rodeo, right? Like those are ones where it's like, hey, our building's not available. We don't really want to play a bunch of games. Home games not in our building. Like send us out on the road during those periods. So those are kind of the two that maintain. The Celtics used to be every year in late February, I think, or early March, was one or the other. They that's when Barnum and Bailey Circus came to town, and they were out of town for 2.5 weeks every year. Then while the circus set up. So what they do, teams send those in. Then the league puts together and sends back a first pass schedule where they send that back. Now, what they try to do is work with the teams and their other partners, because it's roughly half the teams share a building with a hockey team, too. So then it comes in, all right, well, who's the primary tenant, right? Who's the secondary tenant? In some cases, like in LA, who's the third team in the building? Then what concerts do you have? What else do you have going on? And let's work through all that stuff. Then it gets sent back, and then they come out with, here is the schedule. And they do that in conjunction with the NHL and with the buildings themselves. So where we're at right now is why all this stuff is leaking out. Well, the teams have seen the first pass, right? And teams are leaking out there. Hey, we're playing on Christmas. Like, just get it out there. Fun for you and I, or not fun if you don't want to work on Christmas Day. Celtics and Lakers are going to play on Christmas Day. First time in a little while. It's been, I
In a
think
long
3
time.
years. Is it that long? I couldn't
I
remember.
think
I
it
knew.
was somebody had it on Twitter. I think it was 2008
Okay.
was the last time.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
I remember they played on Christmas because the Celtics came in on a 19-game winning streak and they were 27-2. And there was a lot of thought of like, holy crap, they're gonna like beat the Bulls record.
Oh,
And the
right.
Lakers beat them and they broke that win streak. So I know that was a Christmas Day game. But anyway, it is so where we're at right now, we have pieces and parts. The league has said all the tournament days will be released. That's tomorrow, right? Tuesday. All the in-season tournament games will come out, and then my guess is probably Thursday we get all the rest of it. Like
Yeah.
comes out, and here it is. Here's every team's schedule. But what we know so far, we've got our opening day matchups. I just lost it. I know it's
Suns and
good.
Warriors is the evening game, and
Yep.
Lakers Nuggets is the opener.
Early game. Yeah. So Lakers opening in Denver. A couple people were like, whoa, two Western Conference games. When it's Denver, it's hard because they're in that 9 o'clock window is when they play most of their home games. So they'll push them up. I imagine that'll probably be a scheduled 7:30 and 8 tip off, probably or 7:30 or 8 tip off, and then the second game either 10 or 10:30 Eastern. So those are your opening day games. So two fun games, right? We get to see KD play against the Warriors, and then we get to see
the actually go
Lakers.
play in Golden State. He's been hurt.
Yeah, never done
the
it.
NBA was like, we're not messing around. Game one, so we don't miss this.
Yeah, yep. Now, let's all knock on wood and hope nothing happens in the preseason, right? And then Christmas, which is obviously the big day on the NBA calendar. Still, we've got 5 games again. The order of these, I thought the way these were shared was the order. But now we're hearing this may not be the actual order because there is, I believe the NFL is playing as well on Christmas.
Are they? I had a feeling that might happen after like Christmas last year was on a Sunday. And so they kind of had their reason to play NFL games. And I had a feeling they were going to get a taste of it and say like, yeah, we're going to keep doing that.
Yeah, I think they're doing some like game there. So I think they're doing a little bit of shenanigans with the Christmas week schedule. Let's get into it here. Oops, I went 1 week too far.
By the way, the NBA has, while you're looking, the NBA has dominated Christmas for a long time. And my concern was the NFL was going to get a taste of Christmas Day games, and they were going to start to encroach upon that territory. And maybe that's what's going
Monday
to happen here.
Triple header for the NFL. 1 o'clock Eastern, Raiders Chiefs, 4:30 Eastern, Giants Eagles. And then the night game, ABC, Monday Night Football, Ravens, 49ers.
Oh, my gosh. They're coming out swinging.
Like, there are going to be so many fights because they have basically a full-ish slate of games on Christmas Eve, including a Christmas Eve game, which I already knew because that features my Patriots at the Broncos. But they're playing, like, full-ish games. And not only that, if it was like, well, hey, we could do something on Saturday. No, they stuffed 2 games in there on Saturday too. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday of Christmas weekend is a lot of football. But NBA show. So they're going to work some things around. I think the one we know for certain is the 5 o'clock, which has become kind of, that's the prime, like this is the game. That sounds like it's Celtics Lakers. That's at least what we've seen reporting on and some of the things I've heard. The other 2 games, Bucks at Knicks, 76ers at Heat. Those in logic terms would be the early games, but we'll see. Then it's Mavericks at Suns and Warriors at Nuggets. Philly and the Heat. Let's see who's still left on those teams and what they look like. All those rest of those games are pretty good. I think those are pretty good games.
Yeah.
Helps quite a bit. I put this on Twitter and even Knicks fans are like, yeah, we agree. I was like, it helps a lot that the Knicks are good because the Knicks getting Christmas games every year when they stunk was like,
It's same thing with Lakers. When the Lakers were bad, they still played Christmas.
Yep. Now, on the flip side, it did give you that little bit of a break if it's like, I kind of have this one on and half watch. So, but yeah. So there we are. There's your Christmas slate. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. I like it. I do wonder with it being in Denver, if that will actually be, if that is the evening game or if that is the right after Lakers Celtics game.
Yeah. Or do you put that one in like Like, could you put that one in the afternoon and play the
Oh yeah.
Heat? The Suns is the late game. Yeah, I mean, they gave themselves options here for sure. So all I know is I certainly won't be watching any of the football games. I'll be glued to the NBA all day on Christmas, as I have been since I was very little. Back when I was a kid, it was only two. Right, it was like two games. You got I want to say it was like noon and then like three or something were the two games, and we
I
watched every year.
I think I'll have multiple screens going.
Yeah,
I think I'll
probably.
have multiple screens going.
See,
Just
you
keep an
still
eye
do
on
the
everything.
fantasy football and all that stuff.
Oh
I
yeah.
know. I had to let that go,
That's going to
unfortunately.
be like playoff time and everything for fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's keep an eye on that.
Yep.
Okay. In any event, the schedule, we'll be getting the full schedule soonish. I know tomorrow they're doing a big deal where they're announcing the in-season tournament games and all of that. So it's coming. It's
Yep.
coming. And then we'll be able to look through the schedule and point out the highlights and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. And everybody can go and argue that their team got screwed, even though everybody plays 82 and roughly the same exact schedule. But
I think every West team is going to feel like they got screwed. Because you're going to look at
everybody
the
always
schedule and you're
feels
going to
like
go, oh,
who goes
everybody's
for
good. This sucks.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
It's
that
actually
is
great, but
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
All right. Cooper Flag, finish up with this. Reclassifies, now part of the 2025 draft class. This is kind of file this away, but could wind up being a very, very, very big deal for next season and what teams are competing for draft positioning and all that sort of stuff. Just again, he's very good. So this is something certainly to take note of.
Super fun story too. He grew up in an extremely small town in Maine, only about 3,800 people in his hometown. Dominated early in his high school career. He was named the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state as a freshman. Dominated. He's also a twin. He has a twin brother. Then he transferred to Montverde Academy. For those who don't
A
know,
lot of players have gone
Montverde
through there.
is right down the road from me, where I live in the Orlando area, and I've been there quite often and seen them play and practice and different things. And he's good. He's legitimate. Like he is like legitimately really really good. A last year at the under 17 World Cup in 7 games. Played a little bit of a different kind of role as far as a scorer. So only 9.3 points per game, but 2.4 steals, 10 rebounds per game, and 2.9 blocks. And he's 6'9", really athletic, can really shoot, can handle, can dribble. He's gonna kind of be one of those do-it-all forwards that will come in right away. And as Trevor said, this is now puts him in line to potentially be the number 1 pick, but in the 2025 draft. So this coming year, he'll be one more year in high school. He'll be in at Montverde, but he's going to graduate at the end of the year, and then he's going to go to college for 1 year because remember that did not get changed in the CBA. So he'll go to college for 1 year. Maybe he does G League Ignite. I don't think so. I think he'll probably go to college for 1 year. He'll play one year college basketball somewhere, and then we'll find out if he ends up being the number 1 pick. But right now, kind of a big deal. Not generally. If this was March, we probably wouldn't even make anything more than a passing mention of this. But the reality is, this is a big deal, and it's just a fun story that this kid from a small town in Maine, which is far from a basketball hotbed, he made it, and now right on the stage to potentially be the number 1 overall pick.
Yep. So it's certainly, again, nothing that's like pressing this moment, but a name to remember. Keep an eye on it. And 2025 draft class, this could end up being a really big deal. And it could, I'm not saying the teams are going to completely shift their strategy, right?
Sure.
Just because this, but it's just another thing to add that teams are going to factor in when they're making decisions on, hey, we're doing this trade. We can get a 2025 pick or a 2027 pick. Well, maybe this, pushes them more towards 2025. Sure. This could end up being something that matters to some degree. I'm not saying everybody's going to suddenly, tank and do everything they can to go get the number 1 overall pick, but it could end up being a pretty big deal here.
Yeah, and he's not. He is, to be very fair and honest, he's not on the level of like Wembanyama,
yes,
any of those kind of guys. Now he could continue to boost his stock and all that. But this is just it's interesting. We're going to see more of this, more of these kids reclassifying, more kids that are going to continue to do things like G League Ignite and Overtime Elite and that. In my opinion, this is great. This is all different pathways. There should not be one pathway to professional sports. There should be multiple pathways in, and and everybody should be allowed to pick the one they think that's right for them. And I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want to ask you a question before we wrap up the show. This is not really nonsense. It's because it's basketball related.
Okay.
I saw you tweeting about Team USA because I know you were watching, and Austin Reeves looked pretty good, right? He's a big part of why they won, in those games. So, but what like is that the extent of what you've been doing basketball wise right now? Is Team USA? I mean, I know you're still doing Lakers content and all that stuff, but you got anything else you've been working on or doing or like working through? Just curious.
Just working through anything else that I've been working on?
Like I don't know. Is there anything you're like, I want to go back and see, what did it look like? I don't know, when Pau Gasol played with the Lakers, or I'm making that up because he just went into the Hall of Fame, but anything like that, I don't know.
No, I mean, I can't say that I've been like going back and working through too much. I've certainly been watching a ton of highlights and definitely watching Team USA and all that kind of stuff. Why? What's on your mind here, Keith?
No, I was just curious because somebody asked me the other day. They're like, what do you do now? Like, because it's like in the question was very respectful. I got it in an email and it was asked, like, well, what do you guys do at this time of year? They're like, full disclosure, they opened with big fan of the show. Happy you guys are still putting out shows regularly and blah, 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 and all that nice stuff. And I shouldn't blah, 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 the nice stuff because it is nice. And it was very good to hear and read. But just what is it you guys do at this time of year? Like,
okay,
what do you do basketball wise? And I knew for me, like what I've been doing is there are about 10, 12 teams I didn't really get to see at Summer League like the way I wanted to. So I've been going back through and I've been watching like the roster level guys, the guys who will either be training camp guys, actual roster guys, or guys who have a legitimate shot to come up through like the G League or wherever. And I've been spending a lot of time just trying to watch and understand those players a little bit more. Like I've been doing that. We're working on some projects for Spot Track where we're doing some stuff around. It'll come out late. We talked all about the cap space thing that'll come out later this week. My cap space article. We still get a couple off-season recaps, and then we got the player classification project that we're working on. So I've been kind of working on all that stuff, but actual watching basketball wise, it's been watching a lot of the G League stuff, Summer League stuff.
The way you were saying, I was thinking there was something I was supposed to be plugging.
No.
And I'm like, well, I know we're doing the team reviews, but what am I forgetting about here?
No. Yeah, that was stumbled. That's why you're the host of the show. Because I stumbled and blew it. So
I was like thinking, oh my gosh, we've got some project that we've totally talked about, and I'm blanking on what it is right now. No, we've still been doing plenty of Lakers stuff. We've still been doing our live shows and all that. But then it also gives me like when games aren't on, because like when games are on, I do the play-by-play during the game. I do the post-game show. So that's like a game night by itself is like 5 hours worth of work for me. That's just the game. And then any news that comes out during the day and all that sort of stuff. And then of course we get news in the off days and all that. So during the season, it can be tough to pay attention to like all the other stuff that needs to get done. So like I've been adding moderators to the Lakers Nation YouTube channel. We've been fleshing out what memberships are going to look like when we roll that out. Got a new intro made, which Lincoln did a great job with. Got that made up for the Lakers Nation YouTube channel, which will debut shortly. While we were on the show here, I messaged our editor, Lincoln, and said, hey, I need a Hurricane Harden drop. Can you make me something? So like paying more attention to some of the peripheral stuff around our shows. I've certainly been doing, more of that and kind of figuring out how exactly we'll want everything set up for next season and all that. So again, this is the time of year when I've got a little bit more time to do that, but the clock is ticking because before we know it, man, it's going to be training camp and then it's going to be full bore back into, 5-6 shows a week, if not more, plus tons of news items and all kinds of stuff to get into. So it's this time of year that I try to take care of like all the housekeeping stuff that I can.
No, and it's just I thought it was an interesting question because somebody was
Sure.
like, "Yeah, what do you do now?" And like, it's funny because like, yes, we do take time off, and yes, things have
Hmm.
slowed down. So there's not the incessant kind of grind of like, all right, got to do this and do that, and we I know just the way you and I work, we both are pretty organized, pretty we're attached to our routines
Hmm.
on things. So like we I know for both of us, we're like, let's get this schedule released because then that all right, now I know how my life is going to look for the next 6
Right.
months or whatever. But yeah, it's at this time of year when it's catch up, and I was just like, yeah, that's an interesting question, so I thought I'd bring it up on the show just to kind of throw it out there, and then we'll wrap us up.
Yeah. 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 No, it's a good one. It's a good one because there's I found that there's a lot of people who actually are curious about what we do, how we got to the point
Yep.
of doing this. Because a lot of people that say, "Oh, I would love to talk about sports, to just talk about basketball all the time," and kind of want some insight into what all of that looks like and
Yeah.
how what how life actually plays out. And I promise you, it's not as exciting as you would think most of most of the time. Every once in a while, we do get the 2 a.m. Kevin Durant gets traded, and we get to
Yes.
go crazy. But yeah, maybe that's something we can talk more about kind of as the summer goes on.
Yeah, and I'll say this too for like every like right now, it's probably not that way because we had pretty much the James Harden story and a couple other
Hmm.
smaller things. But like when we do the show, it's like, well, when I tell people, I said, yeah, it doesn't, I'll be honest, it doesn't always feel like work because a big chunk of the job is watching basketball.
Yeah.
But like for every time we sit down and talk about something, like hours of work have preceded that.
Yes.
When I sit down to write, like, yeah, if it's a news article, which I used to do a lot of for Celtics blog, I would knock those out. And those are very quick because you're basically just trying to get something up of like, the Celtics have completed a trade, and you're putting out the details so that then it's out there for people to digest and see what it looks like. But when you're like doing an article, it's like 10 times more work for that the hour of maybe writing or whatever of research and all the other stuff. And it's kind of funny because I said it to a friend the other day. He's like, hey, what are you doing right now? And I was like, oh, I'm just doing some work. He's like, what does that mean? And I was like, I'm actually watching Sacramento Kings G League or Summer League games because I didn't get to see much. And he goes, oh, so you're not really working? And I'm like, yeah, that is work. Like that's work for me. Like now, my work's way better than his work. His work sucks. Like to be
Mhm.
honest, his job's not fun, and my job is. So there it is. But we do work like that. That is part of it.
Well, and I look at it this way too. Like we part of what we do, and part of what this entails is being ridiculously in tune with everything going on in the NBA, right?
Mm-hmm.
To a basically obsessive degree, right? And that's part of what, like, we say, well, do we spend a ton of time setting up every single show? No. So no, if we have a certain segment or something like that, then sure.
Sure.
But for the most part, you and I can get into it, can just throw a topic up and we can get into it and break it down. And you certainly can go deeper into the cap stuff, all the nuance than I can on that side. I get more into the narrative side of things that you guys who've watched the show kind of understand. That's how Keith and I are wired. But um it's but that comes from constantly monitoring everything. Like I don't think of it either, but my wife will notice like we're watching a movie or something, and she's like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm looking at this story about, the James Harden situation or whatever."
Yep.
Like, just it's constantly staying on top of every little thing going on in
Yeah.
the league, and that I don't think about it as like I'm clocked in right now because
Yep.
there is no time clock. I'm just constantly on it, right? And that's just the way that it is. I know you're the same way.
Yeah, and for everybody, neither of us is this is in no form or fashion a complaint.
No, 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 no.
We
And I'm
are,
saying it doesn't
this is
feel like
yeah,
I'm working
yeah,
at the time. I'm not
exactly.
even
Yeah,
thinking about that because that's what I'm doing. And that in turn allows us to do this kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and it's funny to that point too, and even like the James Harden thing, like that's preceded by we sat down and mostly just started talking about it today for the show. But like there were a few texts back and forth of like, all right, yeah, we got to look at this, and we're constantly texting each other throughout the day of like,
Hmm.
hey, did you see this? All right, put it in the not that we necessarily have a show file, but like file it away for tomorrow. Like
Yep.
we'll be ready to go, and we'll have all those things kind of there, and it's fun. And to your point about like TV or movie and all that stuff, it's part of why I love going to the movies, because I do, when I go to the movies, I shut my phone off. Like I shut it off for the duration of the movie, because for me, like that's my chance to like, I like, one, I paid for to go see this movie.
Right.
Like I want to get my money's worth. And like, that's like, all right, I'm going to disconnect for the next 2 hours. I'm just going to focus on this. Like I had to watch Secret Invasion, the first episode, twice, because the first time, like I was kind of playing on my phone and I was so completely lost at the end of the first episode where it's like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. So yeah, but it is funny. Like it's funny because my daughter gets like so crazy where she's like, how can you do those two things at once? She's like, I don't get it. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm not like, I'm into the show we're watching, but like, let's be honest. Like if we're sitting around, one of the things we watch together as a family is Out Daughtered, which is like a goofy show about the family that is the 5-girl quintuplets. And like, we like it because it's funny. But and like I'm like, I don't exactly need to be like fully dialed in here. Like I'm not like it's not like I'm gonna miss a plot point and be like, oh, I'm lost. Why is this one now in dance class? Like I think I'm okay to follow along while I scroll Twitter or read an article or whatever. But we do, there are certain things like when we watch the Mario movie, it's like, all right, we're all gonna put our phones on the counter. We're gonna watch the Super Mario movie, and we did it. It was fun. So yeah, I just thought that was fun. I thought it was a great question that somebody asked about like why is it this way, and it's just that's what we're doing right now.
It's not all that dissimilar from obviously my background with teaching, where people say, oh well, you get your whole summer off. Not really. That's there's always, and not to say that you're always on when you're teaching or whatever. There's a ton of differences, but just there's this perception that, oh, you've got all summer to just hang out and do whatever. And it's not really true with teaching. Just like during the off season, it's not, we still have tons of stuff that we are doing and, staying up on it and all of that.
Yeah. They're definitely not a just, sit out fully here. That is not where we're at.
Right. Okay. Well, let us know in the comment section. Do you guys want to hear more about that kind of stuff? About doing this as a job, as a career, being a sports media personality, I suppose is our titles. Let us know if you want to hear more about that, because Keith and I certainly can go on and on and on and tell you all about, kind of what we do. So,
or if you guys want to do it as like a live show where you can ask us questions on one of our, and we will get back to Front Office Fridays. We've just, the last few weeks have been crazy with stuff going on. So we will get back into those on a regular basis. So hopefully this Friday, we'll see.
Yep. Yes, indeed. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Don't forget to turn on those notifications. And of course, follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Till next time, see ya and stay safe.